Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We'll be waiting a few minutes to get started, just as a courtesy for those who are still in the middle of connecting. We should start probably about 3 or 4 past the hour. Thank you. Okay, good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining us today and being part of our community. We have some great content planned, but just before we get started, I'd like to go over some housekeeping. Feel free to ask questions at any time by typing in the IM window. Be aware that anything you post will be publicly visible. If you prefer, you can post your question anonymously just by checking that box right below where you enter your question. We do have a large number of attendees registered for today. We're really thrilled at the level of interest. It's really great, but just bear in mind, we might not be able to answer all of your questions today in real time. We've got a large team standing by to help, so we'll get through as many as we can during the call. If you visit aka.ms MCAS Q&A, you'll see a post dedicated to the questions that come up in the webinar. You'll be able to review the question transcript after this session, and if need be, post further questions there, and we'll also answer the best we can. If you're listening to this recording of the webinar after the session and you have a question, this is also the place to post your questions after the event. As I mentioned, we are recording today's webinar, and this will be shared publicly. We'll post all the recordings for this sessions on our community at aka.ms/MCAS recordings, as you can see on the screen there. Talking of community, if you're not already signed up, please do come and join us, aka.ms/security community. This is the best way to ensure you don't miss out on any future webinars. It's also where we post our major announcements, and it's a great place where you can interact directly with our engineering teams that are creating our security products. You'll be able to influence our product designs, get early access to changes by doing things like participating in our private previews, requesting features, reviewing our roadmap, and of course, attending events like today's webinar and also our in-person events. As mentioned, we have some great content planned for today. Today's session is part 2 of series of 6 on Microsoft Cloud App Security, or MCAS for short. Throughout this series, we'll be walking you through all the major pillars of functionality, showing you how to deliver and configure each part. So I'd like to introduce you to the team on the call today. We've got Gershon Levitz, who will be presenting and is one of our resident MCAS experts on the call. He's a program manager in our MCAS team and part of what we call our Get to Production group. This role is focused on helping our customers deploy and configure MCAS, so it's really well suited to going through today's topic. On the call, we also have a lot of our product group. We've got Niv, Dima, Danny, Netta, Gal, and Boris to help answer questions, so hopefully we can get through a lot of those. That's me covered on the housekeeping, so without further ado, I shall pass you on to Gershon to get started.
Thank you, Adam. So again, my name is Gershon Levitz. I'm a program manager on the customer experience Get to Production team, working with Cloud App Security and also with Azure Advanced Threat Protection. As Adam had mentioned, today is the second in a series of webinars, and in today's webinar, we're going to be focusing on the threat protection capabilities that we have in Cloud App Security in MCAS. So quickly to provide a quick overview in terms of the functionality and the capabilities that we have within Cloud App Security is starting out with, we have the discovery and shadow IT, so discovering the cloud applications that your users are actually accessing and using, and we could actually also generate reports, so we could actually see what applications are being used within the organization. Once we've identified and have visibility into those applications, we could actually then determine which ones we want to be using and which ones we actually want our users to stop using, and control access to those applications in real time. The pillar that we spoke about last week in the first webinar was information protection, so protecting your information. And today we're actually going to be talking about detecting threats, so high-risk usage, unusual behavior, and using the Microsoft Threat Intelligence and the research that our team is actually doing. So before we jump in, I just want to explain a little bit in terms of the unique value that we have with Microsoft Cloud App Security. So the integrations and the unique integrations that we have between Cloud App Security and the other services in Microsoft, such as the Microsoft Intelligent Security Graph, so where we could actually get signals from the other services at Microsoft together. So if we actually identify that there's a risky IP address in another one of our Microsoft services, such as Azure or Bing or Xbox, that information is very quickly made available to us in MCAS. And then if we see activity coming from that same IP address, we could identify that and raise it to you as an alert in terms of activity coming from a risky IP address. And also integrations with Intune for endpoint management, and also with Azure Active Directory for identity and conditional access. So bringing all these together, together with Cloud App Security, makes a seamless experience for you and a unique experience for our CASB solution. So today we're going to focus on threats and threat protection. So the areas that we focus on, the research that we actually have done with the team is broken down into the following areas. So we're looking to try to identify the malicious insider, so that disgruntled employee, before they could actually start to cause any damage, so we could actually identify them and see what's going on. Malware detection, so we can actually detect malware that's in files that are in your cloud storage, quickly so that they don't cause damage within the environment. So if an attack of an account is compromised, a lot of the times they'll upload malware to a shared folder that can then be synced within the organization. If we're able to identify that quickly, we could actually help you stop that and identify that. Also, we have rogue applications. So applications, so you install an application on your phone. It's asking you for permission to do things. A lot of the times people just say yes, 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 and click next. They don't really look at what permissions are being requested. And all of a sudden that application all of a sudden has access to your email or to your cloud storage. So we're actually able to help you identify those. And then once we are able to do that, we'll also can then pivot back into data exfiltration. So if we're looking at the compromised user or the malicious insider who's doing data exfiltration, unusual uploads and data transfer of data. And then once that's done, a lot of times they'll actually then start to attack in terms of ransomware. So encrypting your files and leaving you signs in terms of how to get in touch with them in terms of being able to get the key to decrypt the file. So we could actually start to see activities and raise an alert when we start seeing these types of activities early on in the environment. And then of course we have the compromised account. So we're trying to take advantage and understand when an account has been compromised so that we can govern and get control back of that account as quickly as possible before they're actually able to do any more damage. What we're actually also seeing is that up until now, a lot of the attacks have been that have been taking place have been in the cloud, but also primarily on premise. So they're looking to get on premise and to cause damage. But actually today we're actually seeing a growing trend of attacks that are cloud only attacks that are just staying in the cloud. As more and more of our information that is being stored in the cloud, there isn't necessarily a need to actually go on premise. So we need to actually have this visibility, and MCAS is giving us this very good visibility in terms of what's actually happening from a threat protection standpoint with the services that you're using in the cloud. So if we look at the attack kill chain that we actually have in terms of the different phases within the attack that take place, these are the various detections that we actually have. And we actually have two different types of detections. We have some deterministic detection, so it's fairly easy. We see activity coming from a suspicious IP address that we actually know is suspicious based upon the Microsoft Threat Intelligence security information graph. Then we're actually able to, we see activity coming from that IP address, we're actually very easily able to raise an alert. And we also have detections that are based upon machine learning or UBA. And in this case, we're actually building a profile of the user's activities. So we're building profiles for the users based upon their activities. And also we're building a profile for the organization, the activities of what the activities for the organization looks like. But when we're building this profile, we're actually building the profile not just based upon the activities, but we're actually looking at the whole session and the activities across all the user sessions. So we actually are able to see a full picture in terms of what's happening, not just what activities are being done, but the sessions and the multiple sessions to the different cloud applications that the user is actually doing. So it gives us a really good, clear picture in terms of what is normal behavior for the user. Then when we see deviations from those activities, we can actually now then raise an alert that the activity that we're seeing in this user is unusual and suspicious. And then when we raise the alert, you can then have the ability to then go ahead and investigate to determine if this is actually something that is suspicious or not. So these are a number of the detections that we actually have in terms of the threat delivery and persistency. So suspicious inbox rules that are created, malicious OAuth applications. And then we can move to indicators of a compromise. So we could actually see activity coming from a suspicious IP address or activity from an infrequent country. So if a user account if a user's credentials are compromised, a lot of times we'll actually see the user still has actually sessions going on, and then the attacker is actually trying to connect from a different location, and it's impossible that the users can actually be in both locations at the same time. And then once we'll move to malicious use of end user content, so unusual file share activity. So these are the different activities that the attacker might be doing to try to exfiltrate some of the data. So he might start sharing a lot of files and folders. He might be downloading a large quantity of data, and activity by a terminated employee is always something that is suspicious. And then malicious uses of a privileged user. So we're always looking to see and monitor the activities of the privileged users within your cloud services, and to see if there's anything that's unusual that's actually happening there in terms of the activities that they're actually doing. Unusual administrative activities is something, is this a user who has been dormant for a long time, or they're doing an administrative activity from a location we haven't seen them do that activity from. So these are the various detections that we actually have across, in terms of these are the detections around the threat protection within cloud app security. So we'll talk a little bit about malware detection. So we're actually scanning the cloud storage for an application for the files, and we actually are looking at identities. We're using the Microsoft Threat Intelligence to look for indications of compromised files. So when we'll see this when I demo this, but in essence, we could actually see, we can see where the file is. We can see what the malware that was actually detected. We could actually then also see where in which cloud app storage this file is actually sitting in within the environment. We also just added the capability of doing sandboxing, so that we're actually going to be looking at files that can be compromised or have malware in them, and then we're actually going to be sandboxing them. I'm sure I'll be corrected if I'm saying this incorrectly, but this has actually started to be rolled out and should be rolled out, over the next few weeks to all of the tenants, and we'll see that in the demo that I show you. OAuth permissions, again, we spoke about this. I spoke about this a little bit before, but MCAS is giving us the capability of seeing what permissions have been granted by which applications and by which users within your organization. And then we could actually take action. So we could actually revoke permission from this application. So if the permission level was high and it's a risky application, we could actually revoke permission, or we could actually authorize the application to the app to have that level of permission to our cloud's applications within the environment. So the good example is you get, and this is something that was done, has been attributed to Fancy Bear by many organizations in terms of sending in share a Google Docs with somebody. The user clicks and says open in Google Docs, and they're actually looking at a permission screen to say, what permissions would you like this application to have? Now, if this is really a Google Docs permission and it's Google, there's no reason for them to be asking permission to manage my emails or to read my emails, because they already have that level of permission, or to manage my contacts. And if we would actually look at it a little bit deeper, we would actually see that it's actually not, Google that's actually doing it, but it's actually somebody else who's actually an attacker who's actually crafted this page to look exactly like it would, or that Google would look like, or a user would then click on allow very easily. Another example here would be, during the World Cup games, if you want to get the latest World Cup application, there's so many of them that are out there, and you just click next when you do the install, allow permissions, and you're done. And then all of a sudden, theoretically, somebody could have access to that user's inbox to read their email, or to their storage to get access to their files. So it's really, really important and really, really powerful that MCAS gives us this capability, this visibility into what's happening within our environment, and also that we could actually very easily revoke those permissions from that application to have access to what it needs, so we could actually minimize the potential damage that's actually being done within the environment. So I'd like to jump to the demo now and quickly show you some of the things that we're actually doing. And the first thing we're going to jump to is going to be, we're going to open up the alerts. So I actually have the alerts page opened up for a specific user, and now we're actually going to be able to see the actual story that we actually saw in the attack kill chain that we spoke about before actually taking place. So we could actually see I filtered off of the user Bill, and we could actually see the alerts that this user is part of within the MCAS detections. So we actually first start to see multiple failed login attempts for Bill, and this could be somebody's trying to guess their password and doing a brute force on this user account. And then I see an activity from a Tor IP address. So this is something, okay, maybe now they guessed Bill's credentials, and now they're actually trying to hide their activities of where they're actually coming from. So they're using a Tor browser. So now we actually can actually know that this is actually, so will be activity. This is suspicious. Normal users within the organizations is not going to be doing. And now we actually start to see that Bill still has his session going. He's still connected to Exchange or SharePoint Online, and all of a sudden, we see activity from Bill coming in from two different locations at the same time, or within a time span that is just impossible to do. So in this example, it's impossible travel between Israel and Mexico. And of course, we can click on the alert, and then we can actually dive deeper down into what's going on within the environment. So we could actually see there was a failed login from Israel, and then he was accessing a file in Mexico. So that seems a little bit. It's actually, and the time frame that this was taking place is actually impossible for without being able to transport yourself electronically, which we don't have yet. You won't be able to see what's going on. It's impossible for Bill to be in Mexico and Israel in such a short difference in only 68 minutes. So we could actually see what's going on here. Now we could actually also here, we could actually really quickly say we're going to require the user to sign in again. We could suspend the user, and then we could do this specifically for specific services at the same time. So we could very easily mitigate the situation of actually taking place. And then continuing in the alerts, we could actually now see that there was a mass download. So it looks like that Bill is actually doing a large download of files. And again, we can actually see and dive deeper into each alert that we get to provide us with additional information that will help us within the investigation. And then we actually see that there's a suspicious inbox forwarding rule, and this can actually help us in terms of determining, all of a sudden now he wants to see all the email that's coming in to Bill, and he's going to forward it to a different location. So we could actually see here. We also tell that the user is an administrator in Office 365, so this raises our, this is a user who has elevated privileges within Office 365, and we could actually see that there was a inbox rule that was actually created, and we could see some additional information here in terms of what was actually taking place and that there was a new inbox rule. And if we click on the view raw data, we'll actually be able to see where the user the rule that was actually set up, and we could actually see that the name they were forwarding this to this user account, which is a Gmail account. And again, this is something that is suspicious and don't understand why. So we want to be able to remove that and talk to the user and suspend the user. And then the last item that we have here is ransomware activity. So all of a sudden now they have their information. And if we click on here also, we also see the details. So we could actually see that we actually saw that there's a help decrypt.txt file. And this is actually common within ransomware attacks, because they need to provide you with a unencrypted file that has the instructions on who to contact and how to pay, to get the key so that you could decrypt the files. And then we could actually, and showing you specific information in terms of that we're seeing 400 of the files have a file extension of Locky, and that we're actually seeing there's a lot of information. So here we're providing you with the information in terms of why we are raising each of these alerts, and in this case, the ransomware activity alert that we've seen here. So if we also then go to, these are the activities and these are the alerts that we actually saw specifically for a user. And when we see these alerts are raised, we could actually then take action for them. We're also able to, via the MCAS SIM connector, we're actually able to forward these alerts and also additional raw data to your SIM if you want. So if you're looking with, if you're working with Splunk or QRadar on premise, we could actually, there's a SIM connector that we can configure, and then we could forward these alerts to your SIM connectors, to your SIM, and that you can use that as your single pane of glass. We also, right before RSA, there was the Azure Sentinel product that was announced, and which is the Microsoft SIM in the cloud, where we already have a connector, so we can go into Sentinel and automatically connect to Microsoft, to the Cloud App Security, and have these alerts funneled into that into Azure Sentinel. So now we're going to take a look at the malware detection that we actually have. So if I look at my policies, I'm just going to go to another tab here, and I'm going to look at my malware policies. So by default, the malware policy detection is not enabled. So this is something we would just need to go into the policy and enable the policy. And this is where we would actually define. So by default, we're using the Microsoft Threat Intelligence information to understand and detect files that are showing indications of being malware. And this is where we would actually enable the file sandboxing. So this is something that over the next few weeks we should start seeing. You should start seeing if you don't already see within your environment. And of course, with the same with all the policies that we actually have, we could actually, for each match of the policy, we can actually create an alert. We can limit the number of alerts so we don't flood your alert page and your SIM, and we can send an email and send an SMS alert, text message for these alerts. We also recently added the ability to create flows in terms of an action to an alert, and I think the last session is going to be dedicated to how to create flows and the flow integration. So, but we could actually, you can help that in terms of reducing the number of alerts and interactions that we actually have within the invert. In this case, once you open up a policy, we could actually see the policy matches. So if I just click on the policy matches over here, I could actually see all of the matches to this detection, and in this case, it's my malware detection. And we can actually see here that we actually have a sandboxing detection that took place over here, and the other ones are through our threat detection. So if I click on the ecar.exe.txt file, I could actually see the information, view the hierarchy in box and where it is located. And I could also go back and I could also see who's the owner of the file. And if I click on, I could get more information on the malware itself. And in this case, it's really just a threat summary from the Microsoft Threat Intelligence team for the ecar file, but we will actually have information on each of the detections, on each of the malware detections, malware that are detected within the environment, so you can get some additional information for each of the malware that's actually detected. We're also now going to jump to the the OAuth application, so the rogue application. So if I click on investigate and OAuth applications, I could actually see all of the information in terms of all of the third-party applications that have been granted permissions into Office 365 or into G Suite if we're connected to the Google services or connected into Salesforce. So I could actually see the information that is actually here. So it's 3 users have this Graph Explorer. It actually ends up being, it's a Microsoft product. Its permission level is high, and I could also then see information about the developer, and I could actually also see the permissions that have been granted. So view and modify OneNote, read and write all user mailbox settings. So I could actually see all of the permissions that have been granted to this application into our environment. So and here we can actually now also say we could report the app, and then we can actually mark the app as banned. And if I click on mark the app as banned, I'm going to revoke the permissions, and I can notify the users who are granted access. And I could actually add a custom message to the user so that they understand why this application or this app has actually been banned. And if I click banned, it's going to revoke permission for all users who are using this application. And we're then going to be able to then close down those rogue applications who have actually gained access. Now I could also, if I want to see which applications or which what rogue applications, I could actually filter here, and I could actually say community use rare. So we're actually using and we're actually seeing which applications are being used across all of the services and of all of our customers, and then we're actually able to see, is this something that's being used by a lot of our customers, or is this something that's rare, that's only something that's actually for you? Seems that could have potentially been a targeted attack against a specific customer. And then I could actually select the permissions that I'm actually interested in. So access mailbox is the assigned user. In this case, it's actually good. I don't have anything, I don't see anything here, so I feel a little bit more comfortable. But from a policy, from a query, I could actually now create a policy from this. So I could actually click the create new policy, and I'd give it a new name, test OAuth policy. If I wanted to, I could give it a description. I could set the severity. I want it to be high. I could select the application that I want this policy to connect to. And it could actually automatically see that the query that I created before is automatically here, so I don't need to recreate it. And I could actually, if I wanted to, I could actually change it. And if I wanted to add something that was actually there. And then I have my governance. I could actually, if I wanted to, if I see a match here, so it's a rare and it matches this policy, I could automatically revoke the application. Be careful doing this, just because understand what if there's going to be a match, it's going to automatically revoke, and that all users will not have access, to this policy, to this application within your organization. The other thing I wanted to show you in the demonstration is the ability to create a policy. So let's take, and the threat detection is out of the box that we get. So we actually have, let me just show you the policies for threat detection that we actually have out of the box. So we have log on from risky IP addresses, mass download, and we also have these all documented in terms of the detections that we have. So the impossible travel. And once we get an impossible travel alert, we can actually, if we wanted to, if we needed to edit the policy, we could come in and edit the policy here. So we could actually then scope it to specific users, within the organization if we wanted to. And then we could also change the sensitivity level. So if we're seeing too many, we can actually then also raise or lower the sensitivity level within the organization. But let's take, for example, if I actually have a use case that is a little bit more specific than what we from the policies that are created out of the box. So I could actually create a new policy. So I'm going to create a new activity policy, and my organization has really, everybody works locally, nobody really travels, and I'm starting to see activity coming from, you know, Nigeria. So I could actually say Nigeria access, and I want to be alerted when anybody's when there's any activity from Nigeria. So I could actually come in here and select location, and I could say equals to Nigeria. We're just starting to see a lot of, you know, attacks coming out of this out of Nigeria. So now I want to be alerted when there's any activity that's coming out of this country. Of course, if you have people who are working in Nigeria, this is not a good, would not be the example. We would have to pick a different country. And of course, I can actually now what I could actually do beforehand, I could actually even create it. I could actually edit and preview this alert. So now we're actually coming from a policy and going back into a query to see, do I have any current matches that are taking place here? And then I could see how many alerts potentially would I actually be seeing in a day. And again, I could create an alert. I can limit the alert to a specific number. And of course, I can have this connected to send an email out also to people. And then if you wanted to, you can actually then suspend the user or require the user to log in again if we start seeing a user who was activity coming from Nigeria or failed logins from Nigeria. Maybe we want the user to sign in again. So we can then create the policy. So the policy is actually really giving us the ability to come in and actually see what we're actually, we can actually customize the policies and create policies to meet the use cases that are unique, that you as an organization that are important to you, or that you're starting to see that you need coverage and visibility into. So let's go back to, if we're going to look at our alerts again. Once we do get those alerts, let's actually look at Bill again. Oh, I'm on the wrong one here. So if we go back to the alerts here, and if we select the Bill, we can actually see the mass download. And if we go into the mass download, we could actually also see the impact that we actually had within the environment. So we could actually see the information that we actually saw here, general. I could actually see specific information around Bill here. So I could actually see he has open alerts, and then we could actually start seeing activities for Bill and making sure. And if we start to seeing a spike of activities, that would actually be interesting also. But then we could also click on the IP address, and then we can actually see how many open alerts we have from this IP address. And then we could see the open alerts, we could see the activities and the admin activities that have come from this IP address. So very quickly, we're actually able to pivot from the user to the IP address that's actually involved in this alert. And of course, within the user, I could also see specific things that are going on, and I could actually view all the activities related to this user, and we can actually open up and view related alerts within the environment. And if I could also see all the view all the owned files. So if I want to see potentially this user, what other files does this user own, and what's the sensitivity or what's contained in those files. I could actually see and start to understand the breadth that this user has in terms of access to files within the environment. And of course, as I had mentioned before, we could actually require the user to sign in again or suspend the user account from here. So let's actually go back to the PowerPoint. So just to recap what we actually showed today. So we saw that the Cloud App Security has the built-in threat protection policies that allow you, that are built on both deterministic detections and also machine learning, where we're building the profile, behavioral profile, the user profile, not just on the activities, but across within the session and across all the user sessions. And we're building this also not just at the user level, but also the organizational level. And we're showing you the capability that you have to see the activities and see the story that's taking place potentially when there is an attack that might be taking place. We also give you the capability of being able to create your own custom policies based upon the activities that you're seeing to meet the requirements that you have within the organization. So here there's resources that we'll actually have in the PowerPoint for you, and these are just links that we actually have to some more explanations on our anomaly detection policies, our OAuth policies, the activity policies, and how to actually manage the alerts within the environment, and also a link to our RSA announcements. So Adam, I'll open this up to you for if there are any questions.
Hey Gershon. So yeah, the questions have been quite active. I think the team have been really good in answering a lot of them quite comprehensively. A couple of things that might be worth delving into, and I'll also let the other guys jump in and maybe make suggestions here. We've had a few questions that have come up around alerting and what can they do around notifications and some of the workflows from that. So that might be something worth having a chat around.
Sure. So within an alert, let me just come back over here. So within an alert, when an alert comes in, we actually have the ability to dismiss an alert. So if I dismiss the alert, I have the ability to provide a reason, and then this information can actually you can send this information back to us, and this will actually also help us in terms of this will help us in terms of fine-tuning and enhancing our detections so that the detections are actually even stronger. And you could actually then type in a comment and then dismiss the alert and send us the feedback. This comes directly to the PG team, and this is something that we actually do look at, and this is really valuable information. So you could dismiss an alert. You can say if it's not interesting and you don't think it's something that we should have alerted on, and then you can just dismiss the alert and it won't show up. On the other hand, if you want to resolve the alert, we can click on resolve, and resolve. You also can send us information, but here this is more in the sense of you've investigated what's actually taken place and you've mitigated anything that was actually there. You could also still send us information here. You can add a comment to it, so this is good for you in terms of being able to see what was done. And you could also send us back information in terms of, again, we're actually use this information to help us make our detections even better. We do have APIs connectors so that we can actually connect in so that you could actually do this and automate this. And again, we do have a SIM connector that allows you to forward these alerts to your SIM so that you can be using the SIM as being the point where you're going to see that these alerts have actually been raised. Now, when I create a policy, so not only can I connect it to the SIM, I can actually also have an email that's actually created that's sent out when there is a policy match. So when there is an alert. So I could actually come in over here and I could actually say, I want to send in an email alert, and I could put in the email addresses or the distribution groups that I want this to go to within the organization. Now, depending upon the alert and the activity that's happening, we could also take governance within the environment. So we could suspend the user automatically. In terms of workflow, we have the integration with Flow. So we could actually, if we want to have a match here, we could actually also select a playbook. So we could say, request input from the user managers to triage the alert. So for the example of potentially the alert on infrequent access from this country, we could send an email to the user's manager and say, hey, is this user traveling to this country? And then we can say yes, no. And then if they say yes, it's great. Then we'll dismiss or we'll resolve the alert automatically, and it will be removed from the open alerts in the queue. Or we could actually send an email to the SOC team with alert detail. So again, this gives us to do some integration. There is really a lot that we could actually do with the flow integration, and the last session, webinar number 6, I think, is dedicated specifically around the flow detections. So I hope that covered that question.
Excellent, thank you for that. Another one here, actually similar to the alerting side of thing, is what sort of time frame should it take for an app to be picked up before an alert is generated? It's a bit generic, but maybe talking around, timings there.
Tom, I think this is probably talking about the OAuth. So if we're talking about the OAuth application, so this is actually something that we should actually pick up fairly quickly. So we're going to have the activity. So when the application, when the user is granted that permission to the application, we should actually see that fairly quickly, and then we could actually the policy should pick that up in fairly near real time in terms of activities that this, if we have a policy against that. And of course, we could always come in and investigate and see and do a query on all of the OAuth applications currently within the environment, and then from there we can create a policy, for the OAuth. I'm not sure if we actually have a policy. So yeah, we actually have here risky OAuth application. So this should actually kick in. Office 365 permission level is equals to high, community use is rare, and then this should actually trigger, and I'm sure Dima or Niv will correct me if I'm wrong, but this is near real time in terms of the detection.
I was just pausing to see if anyone wanted to interject there, but I'll take the silence as no. So actually on OAuth as well, there's a question here around, do we have any plans to add Citrix NetScaler or Cisco or Zscaler web proxy to the OAuth apps investigate? That might be one more for the team, but just in case you have some visibility into that side of things.
Yeah, that we would have to leave for the team, and if somebody wants to jump in and take that, or we'd answer that in the Q&A. The site for the Q&A, the answers.
Sure.
Yeah, if they could actually provide a little bit more information, because the cloud discovery and the OAuth is really two separate, so it might be an interesting use case that we would just need some additional information on.
Excellent. Well, hopefully they can add that to the chat channel. That was the main points I'd taken out of this. I'll open it up to the rest of the Microsoft team if there's any points that they think we should be expanding on here. Otherwise, I think that's kind of about it. And from that resounding silence, I will assume that the Microsoft team have nothing further to add. So I think that's probably around it. Gershon, look, Thank you very much for your session. I will post some more links shortly, but have you got that final slide available as well? Excellent. So just final reminders, if for some reason you don't have the rest of the series, you can find it at aka.ms/MCAS webinar on the screen. You can also find the recordings at aka.ms/MCAS recordings. And if you haven't already, you can join our community at the URL at the bottom of the page there. Thank you again for joining us today, and thanks for being part of the community. We hope to see you again next week. Thanks very much, everybody.